What is something they do in movies that is literally impossible in real life? Hacking into a super secure government system in like 10 seconds by just furiously typing on a keyboard. Yelling enhance at a screen to get a larger photo with equal resolution. There is a movie with Denzel Washington about a runaway train. The antagonist cuts the brake lights, which are air brakes, and the train becomes out of control. If you cut the air to the brakes, the train will come to an immediate stop. Air brakes require air to stay open. Characters crashing through windows or walls without getting a single cut or bruise is something that's completely unrealistic in real life. I don't think you can actually stack groceries in a paper bag in such a way that only a carton of milk and a baguette stick out of the top. People getting knocked out for hours and waking up fine. Total Hollywood fantasy. In real life, you'd have brain damage or worse. In movies, characters often get shot and then just carry on with their day, maybe with a slight limp as if it's no big deal. In reality, getting shot is a traumatic event that typically requires immediate medical attention, and the pain and damage can be debilitating. The idea that someone could just shake it off and continue fighting or even walking around is pure fiction. The human body doesn't work that way, and the recovery process is far more intense than what's usually portrayed on screen. So, want to get a coffee sometime? Sure, that would be nice. Great. Now I'm going to walk away without getting your contact info, knowing anything about your schedule of free time, or even setting up a time and place to meet at a coffee shop. We're just going to somehow randomly both end up at the same place in the future without any planning whatsoever. In movies, you often see characters falling from a significant height and miraculously catching themselves on a pipe or ledge, sometimes even with just one hand. In real life, the force from a fall like that would likely rip your shoulder out of its socket or make it impossible to hold on. The human body isn't built to withstand that kind of impact, and the idea that someone could catch themselves so easily is purely Hollywood magic. The reality would be much more painful and far less heroic. Flying on a dragon is one of those epic movie moments that's pure fantasy. As cool as it looks on screen, I have yet to see anyone manage to do that in real life. Dragons don't exist, and even if they did, the physics of riding one through the sky would be impossible. It's a great piece of escapism, but definitely something that's staying in the realm of fiction. No matter how many times we see it in movies, it's not something that's ever going to happen in reality. Driving normal production cars through closed metal gates, barriers, and even walls, and continuing to drive their miraculously intact car thereafter, with their faces still on. Shooting 94 bullets from a gun without reloading from a gun that holds 6. In movies, characters casually have conversations in helicopters as if they're sitting in a quiet room. In reality, helicopters are incredibly loud, even with earplugs and ear defenders on. The noise level makes it nearly impossible to hear anything, let alone have a full conversation without shouting. The idea of chatting normally in a helicopter without any hearing protection is just another piece of movie magic that doesn't hold up in real life. Hearing sounds in space. I get it's probably awkward without the sound effects, but it always makes me laugh just thinking that IRL it would be completely silent. In movies, space battles are always filled with dramatic sound effects, explosions, laser blasts, engines roaring. But the reality is, space is a vacuum, and sound can't travel in a vacuum. So, if you were actually out there in space, it would be completely silent, no matter how intense the action. I get that it would be awkward to have a silent space battle on screen, but it always makes me laugh to think about how different it would be in real life. Instead of all that noise, you just see things happening in complete, eerie silence, which is a far cry from the adrenaline-pumping scenes we're used to. People walking away from massive explosions without even flinching. In real life, the force, heat, and sound would knock you off your feet, not to mention the shrapnel flying everywhere. But in movies, they just stroll away like it's no big deal, looking cool as ever. Having a deep, meaningful conversation while the world falls apart around you. In real life, I'd be too busy dodging falling debris. Lowele. In movies, characters have this uncanny ability to turn on the TV exactly at the moment when the news anchor is delivering the crucial piece of information they need. In real life, the chances of that happening are pretty much zero. You'd more likely catch the tail end of a weather report or some unrelated story. It's a convenient plot device, but definitely not something that would happen with such perfect timing outside of a scripted scene. When female characters cut their hair with scissors or a knife, and it's the hottest, flawless, salon-quality pixie cut. Walking into a bar and having the perfect witty comeback for every single attempted insult thrown your way, all while the entire place erupts in laughter at your razor-sharp timing. In real life, I'd think of the perfect retort, 3 hours later in the shower. Not literally impossible, but practically unlikely. In movies, characters often find street parking right outside their destination, even in the heart of a busy city, in the middle of a weekday. Anyone who's ever driven in a city knows how frustratingly rare this is. In real life, you'd be circling the block for ages, or settling for a spot several streets away if you're lucky. It's a small detail, but one that always stands out because of how convenient it is for the plot. The reality is far more frustrating, involving much more time, patience, and probably a bit of swearing as you try to find that elusive parking spot. Hitting somebody in the head to knock them out, and the person wakes up completely fine. No, they just sent that person's brain offline with a very large chance to die, a concussion, and not to mention the very possible chance of brain damage. Shake off getting knocked the fuck out and go about your day. That shit fucks you up for a few days at least. If you're on your back with a grown man on top of you in mount position for the MMA fans, choking you with your shoulders on the ground, there's zero chance you can pick up a lamp or something and swing it with enough force from that position to do anything but annoy the guy on top of you. In movies, a character can walk into a bar, casually order a beer, and the bartender magically knows exactly what kind to serve. Then, almost on cue, a beautiful woman strikes up a conversation, and before you know it, the scene cuts to them in bed, with the sheets perfectly arranged for a PG-13 rating. In reality, ordering a beer would likely prompt the bartender to ask, "What kind?" since there are dozens of options. As for instantly hitting it off with a stranger and ending up in bed within minutes, let's just say real-life interactions are usually a lot more complicated and far less cinematic. It's a tidy, idealized sequence that rarely, if ever, happens outside of Hollywood. Making a bullet curve simply by flicking your wrist while you shoot a gun. In movies, characters are often between jobs, yet somehow still manage to live a pretty comfortable lifestyle. They're shown going out to eat with friends, keeping up with their mortgage payments, and generally not stressing too much about finances. In reality, being between jobs usually means tightening the budget, worrying about bills, and definitely cutting back on dining out. The financial strain of unemployment is often significant, and the carefree attitude portrayed in films is far from the truth for most people. It's a convenient plot device that glosses over the harsh realities of job loss, making it seem much less stressful than it actually is. In movies, characters often fire weapons indoors and then immediately start conversing as if nothing happened, all without wearing any ear protection. In reality, the noise from a gunshot in an enclosed space is deafening and would leave your ears ringing, making normal conversation nearly impossible. The lack of ear protection in these scenes is pure fiction, as the sound levels would cause significant hearing damage and make communication extremely difficult. A wild animal is attacking me. No problem, I'll lie on the ground with a spear in the air and they'll leap on top of it to impale themselves. Lifelong martial artist here. I've never seen a 5'3", 120-pound woman KO a grown man who's significantly bigger than her with one shot. Not once. People not showing any signs of adrenaline or an adrenaline dump after stressful situations. There will be shaking, physically, voice, breathe, and there will be a physical and psychological reaction to it ending. In movies, characters often take a pill and experience immediate effects, whether it's a painkiller, a sedative, or something else. In reality, most medications take time to work, often requiring 20 to 30 minutes, or even longer, to be absorbed into the bloodstream and start having an effect. The idea that a pill would kick in instantly is pure Hollywood magic, and it's far from how things work in real life. Intentionally slicing their hand open for whatever dumb reason, blood oath or something, and then not having a weeping, painful, infected wound that reopens every time you use that hand for weeks. Punch a guy in the face 100 times and never knock out a tooth. Also, all the facial cuts are miraculously healed within minutes. A small woman beating up a large man. Sure, certain self-defense moves are beneficial in this scenario, but in the movies we see smallish women leads absolutely kicking ass, throwing dudes through windows and walls, etc. Nope. In movies and fairy tales, enchanted animals often talk just like humans, delivering perfect speech with no issues at all. But if animals could actually speak, they'd likely have huge speech impediments due to the different shapes of their teeth, tongues, lips, and other parts of their mouths. Imagine a cat or a dog trying to form words with their sharp teeth and long tongues. It would be almost impossible for them to produce clear human speech. The idea of animals talking like humans is charming and fun, but in reality their anatomy would make it extremely difficult, if not downright comical, to understand them. Stomping really hard and making a whole parking lot collapse, I'm looking at you, Vin Diesel. In movies, characters can chase someone through a chaotic urban environment, taking dozens of turns and losing sight of them multiple times, yet somehow still manage to find them at the end of a dead-end alley. In real life, navigating a busy city while chasing someone would be far more complicated. With all the obstacles, crowds, and the sheer number of possible escape routes, the chances of actually catching up to them after losing them so many times would be incredibly slim. It's a scenario that's far more about cinematic convenience than reality. Flying from hood of a car at any speed, getting up and running. I came off 1 under 5 miles per hour, wrecked my sweater, and had to lay down for an hour. All these fight scenes where they are actively blocking each other's punches and kicks for a long drawn-out fight. Real fights don't happen that way. In fact, if you ever watch martial arts tournaments, most points or knockouts happen within seconds, and any actual blocks are done like boxers, where you are protecting the head or body by keeping your arms in close. Whereas in these martial arts movies, they are wildly moving their arms in wide motions, blocking. In movies, characters often hang up the phone abruptly without saying goodbye, making plans or even acknowledging the end of the conversation. In real life, this would be considered rude and leave the other person confused. Most people wrap up phone calls with some form of closure, whether it's a quick bye or a confirmation of what's next. The abrupt hang-up is a movie trope that skips over the small social niceties that are common in everyday interactions. We had a fight and broke up. But maybe if I go to her place of work with a big romantic gesture, this girl I've only been dating for 3 days will forgive me and we'll get married. You often see a character lift someone off the ground with one arm, their elbow locked, while choking them. In reality, this is practically impossible for most people. The amount of strength required to lift an entire human body with one arm in that position while maintaining a firm grip around their neck would be extraordinary. The physics and biomechanics just don't add up. This is more about creating dramatic tension on screen than anything remotely realistic. Characters often blow up a car by simply shooting the gas tank or the filler cap. In reality, this is highly unlikely. Gasoline isn't explosive on its own, and shooting a gas tank would more likely result in a leak than an explosion. Diesel is even less volatile, making it nearly impossible to ignite with a gunshot. The idea of cars instantly exploding from a single bullet is pure Hollywood fiction, and far from how things would actually play out. Gunfights where the good guys never miss, the bad guys always do and nobody runs out of ammunition. In movies, characters often take a big sip from a coffee cup right after pouring it, without any reaction to the scalding heat or, if it's been sitting, the unpleasant taste of cold coffee. In reality, that first sip would either burn your mouth or make you cringe if it's too cold. The casual way they drink it in films ignores the fact that most of us would either blow on it first or make a face if it's not the right temperature. It's a small detail, but one that always stands out as unrealistic. The average car with an engine in front will go front side down immediately if you jump off a ramp. That Dukes of Hazzard jump would never happen IRL with that car. Always walk through a door without ever getting the doorknob caught on a pocket. In movies, characters often crawl through air ducts to sneak around buildings, but in reality, unless you're the size of a small cat, that's not happening. Most air ducts are far too small and flimsy to support a human's weight, let alone allow someone to move through them. The idea of using air ducts as secret passageways is pure movie fiction and wouldn't work out so smoothly in real life. In movies, characters often have whispery or regular-voiced conversations in a bar where live music is playing, and somehow they can hear each other perfectly. In reality, the noise level in a bar with live music would make it nearly impossible to hear anything unless you're shouting into each other's ears. The idea that you could have a normal conversation in that environment is pure fantasy, making those scenes far less realistic than they appear. Go to bed with makeup on and your hair looking great, and it stays like that when you wake up. Reviving someone who flatlined with CPR and then being totally fine. Knocking someone out by hitting them and then having them wake up later with nothing but maybe a headache. If someone gets hit hard enough to lose consciousness, especially for more than a few moments, they have a concussion, and a severe one at that. They're likely enough to never wake up if they don't get urgent medical attention. Don't f around with concussions, people. Batman doesn't kill people is BS. Probably half the criminals he beat to unconsciousness would have died of their injuries. Batman just doesn't like guns because of his backstory. He'll throw you off a building or beat you to death with barely a second thought. Now, you can cause unconsciousness by briefly compressing the carotid artery, i.e., via a rear naked choke, and as long as you release them as soon as they pass out, they'll generally regain consciousness without complications. Source: have been choked out in judo practice. BC: I didn't tap out in time. It really only takes a matter of seconds if the move is applied precisely. It's common to see a character supporting a family on a single income while comfortably owning a house and car. In reality, this is increasingly difficult for most people, especially with the rising costs of living. The idea of easily maintaining a middle-class lifestyle on one income is more of a nostalgic fantasy than a reflection of today's economic realities. It's a scenario that's becoming less and less attainable in real life. Easily the most immersion-breaking for me, outrunning an explosion. Number: if you were close enough for it to matter, you were dead before you realized it boomed. One thing movies often depict that's impossible in real life is characters dodging bullets after they've been fired. The speed of bullets is so fast that it's impossible for the human eye to track them, let alone react and move out of the way in time. As someone who works in a lab literally every laboratory scene, catching a guy's fist in your hand when he throws a full power punch at you, parry it away? Sure. Catch it like a wiffle ball? Nope. After someone is shot, all you have to do is extract the bullet, because according to movie biology, it's the bullet being inside you that's killing you, not the giant hole that the bullet left. A typical scene is that our hero is dying of a bullet wound, but he somehow makes it to some shady underworld doctor who is usually a veterinarian or a doctor who lost his medical practice license. Then the doctor hands the hero a bottle of whiskey vodka, and our brave hero takes a huge swig of it. The doctor then takes the bottle and pours it on the bullet wound. The hero yells in pain and swears at the doctor. The doctor takes some bend tweezers and starts digging around. The hero may or may not faint from the pain, but finally the doctor holds up a bullet, probably a deformed, unfired bullet, shows it to either the hero or a bystander, then, with a loud clink and a sigh, he drops it into a metal pan. In the next scene, the hero has a bandage but is perfectly fine now. Thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments what other movie moments just don't happen in real life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content.